How do you get your organization, your CMO, or even yourself if you're unconvinced, to start making a series of social media videos that helps to promote what you do? That is what I'm looking at in today's public relations podcast with the help of a very good friend of mine, Dominic Walker, who did exactly this within what I thought was one of the most unlikely industries in the legal profession, making videos for them. That's what's coming up today. You are listening to the Public Relations Podcast. Welcome back once again. I'm back from my holiday in Sardinia, so we're back to normal service. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see I'm in my green screen studio again. But as I say, we've got loads more stuff coming up on this. Thank you so much also for all the feedback. The website is being improved. I'm working on that right now. But the other thing that I promised to do was to start twisting more arms and getting more people to appear on the show to provide their insight as well. You know, when you think about guest interviews on podcasts, the general thing you get are these sort of 40 minutes, 1 hour long rambling chats with people that have appeared on 200 other podcasts saying exactly the same thing. And I don't want to do that. So what I've been doing is I've basically started recording chats that I'm having with people, and they're just cutting out some of the bits from that I think could benefit you the most. So that's what we're going to do with Dominic now. It's a really interesting chat. And this first part of it, I'm going to run the second part another day, goes into detail about how he started off with launching this video series in that firm. I suspect you could learn a lot from this if you're trying to do this too. Hope you find this really interesting. It was a few years ago that we were working in politics together, weren't we, on a London, so that's in the UK, mayoral campaign. And you've been in law since then, but tell everyone a bit about what you've done with your own brand, because you went and changed the way that your legal firm basically did its social media, didn't you?
So as you say, I've worked in politics, but before that, winding the clock even further back, I'd worked in radio broadcasting.
Yeah, like me.
You have as well.
Yeah.
So I guess we brought a little bit of radio broadcasting to law, really. I wondered if it would be worth the law firm setting up a podcast of some sort of an idea along those lines.
Yeah.
And then following a few conversations with our head of business development, we came up with this idea of doing YouTube videos and calling them JMW's Inside Man. So the law firm I work for is JMW Solicitors, and we do the Inside Man. And what the Inside Man is, for anybody who's not seen it, is a video series where we talk to partners, solicitors, and paralegals within the firm as well about particular legal issues, and we try and make them relatable to everyday situations, so that it's number one, it's a way of promoting the firm. It's us saying, hello, we're a law firm, we're here, feed us, get in touch with us. And I think being in video form, it brings down that barrier, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know who you're with beforehand.
Yeah.
But
how did you kind of get this idea going though? Because I've never worked in law. I mean, I remember when you were first starting, you were doing your training and you were going into it. But, I always kind of imagine law as being a stuffy, backward, not very PR focused kind of thing. So how did you get that moving?
Do you know, when I very started training, I was working with a barrister. We had a piece on, and I worked with a barrister, and she sort of said to me, so what's your background? I said, oh, it's a radio broadcaster. Oh, the two jobs are so similar, aren't they? Now, I thought that was a tongue-in-cheek comment, but actually, when you boil it down, radio broadcasting and law are not that different.
Okay, come on, you're going to have to persuade me on that one. How?
Because in both jobs, you're communicating with people. You communicate. When you were on reading the news, Richard, you are explaining to me what can be quite a complicated series of events in the news, and you're explaining that to me in a 30 or 40 second piece, so that the listener to your news broadcast who doesn't understand this particular economic story or whatever can understand it. And in a similar vein, I, as a lawyer, am explaining what might be quite a complicated legal concept. There might be lots of legal cases around that area. There might be lots of staff around that area. But I need to explain that in a user-friendly manner to the client who's paid me for that advice. And the client doesn't want to sit there for hours on end while we explain, subsection A and subsection B. They're not interested.
Right, you're so right. Yeah, it's communication again, isn't it? But how did you then go and persuade them to say, okay, well, give me some time in my day to make some videos? I'd love to do it, but what did you say?
So I wanted to do a podcast originally, and I've had a few conversations around the podcasting idea. But we've got a head of business development called Mark Yaffe, and Mark is a really forward-thinking guy. He was on board with it straight away. And then I think after a few conversations behind the scenes, he came back to me and said, look, let's do this. Let's do a video series and we'll call it The Inside Man. And so the idea was born.
I love the title as well, because it's kind of got that insider sound to it as well. And how did it develop? I mean, did you do some test shows first, or did you just sort of start doing it?
Well, it's quite funny because the idea was to do a bank of maybe about 20 or 30 videos for us to have that we could trickle out over a period of time. We would have these so-called generic videos.
Yeah, evergreen stuff.
Yeah. So we could use that at any point. But then as we were setting it up, the European Super League, you may remember, was about to launch. Of course, it never did.
Yeah.
So I said to our head of sports law, I said, look, we've got to do a video about this. So at the time when we were going to be doing evergreen generic videos, we talked about the European Super League, pushed it out, spoke to our head of intellectual property about the intellectual property issues, and then we were up and running. So, it was sort of, we're up and running.
But that's it, isn't it? Because we know from our days in PR is that timeliness in itself is kind of, well, it creates endorphins in people, doesn't it? It's that feeling of needing to know now. So when you're adding a comment to an existing story, it just makes it so much more engaging than having some generic content.
Yeah, and in politics, I used to do just that. I'd have the TV on in the office.
Yeah.
I'd be looking at news websites, and you look for the big news story of the day, and then you think, well, how can I put a lot on that? And really, that's what we're doing in videos, because if there's a big legal case around at the time, so for example, I remember the Ed Sheeran copyright case. I was able to get one of the paralegal team from our intellectual property team on about that. There's been defamation cases, so we can quickly. We've got so many lawyers. We're a full service law firm. We can quickly comment on those big issues of the day. So in that sense, it's not dissimilar, really.
I was going to say, that's interesting. So I'm kind of imagining you then. Is this right? You're sitting there in the morning, you're going, okay, what are the news stories today? What can we comment on? I'm sure if I look in my directory of the company lawyers, I can find someone who can do it. And then what do you do? Do you ring them up and say, right, you're on?
Yeah, I treat it exactly how you would if you were running a news team. Now, Richard, in the morning, I'll go in, have a good look around, see what's the news agenda for the day. And I do just that. I email or call up the lawyers, or if it's a lawyer who's nearby to me, just go over and have a chat and say, what do you think about if we do this, and work it out between us. And it's great because the lawyers within our firm have been so receptive to it as well. And, only too happy to sit down and to discuss the legal issues of the day. So it's good.
I'm really interested by this point about it being law is communication, isn't it? I just never thought of it that way before. It's like you see that. What's that TV channel in America? There's sort of the Law and Crime Network or something like that. And the first time I saw it on YouTube, it's like, well, why do you make this show? And then you think, well, actually, it's very easy to make TV, but it's engaging because it's will people win? Will people lose? What are the arguments? You get to decide yourself listening to the court cases. It was like the whole Johnny Depp thing and Amber Heard thing. It was a chance for everyone to kind of get excited about the arguments and listen to it and go, oh, he's guilty, she's guilty, and all this, wasn't it?
And you hear lawyers who, if we had somebody sat here now and we said, tell us about your favorite case that you've been involved in, they will almost recite that case as a story, because that's what it is. It's real life facts that are relatable. So in that sense, the TV show channel that you talk about there is a little bit like, it's relatable. You can kind of think, oh yeah, I can understand that. I can get my head around that. People love Rinder, don't they? And you watch Judge Rinder, and he's applying legal principles in an everyday situation. Somebody borrowed my car and they broke it. And that sort of so relatable.
That's Dominic Walker. I suspect I'll have more from him next week on the Public Relations Podcast. If you're new to this show, it is the publicrelationspodcast.com, the publicrelationspodcast.com, where you can also sign up to the newsletter. I'm a little bit behind on that, but I'll be rounding up some of the key tips within the show in there as well. And also I'm going to be planning to launch some resources on the website too soon, where I don't want to call them a course because that sounds like some big elaborate thing, but some of the things that I've been covering in the show, I've tried to structure them into something that you can follow a bit more. You'll find all the details for that in the publicrelationspodcast.com. Sign up to the newsletter and I will have details for you there. Coming up later this week, I don't really focus so much on social media, on the buttons to press and all that, because there's so many other shows and so much resources out there on the internet that covers this. But what I am interested in are specific techniques designed to engage people in a one-to-many basis. And there's been a really interesting one I saw over the past couple of days in the New York Times, and I'm going to cover that a little bit later this week. It's the Public Relations Podcast. Speak to you real soon.